Hello. It is Fabian Williams, marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor with Life Anew, where your new life awaits. I can be reached at www.lifeanew.com. And that is LIFEANU. And before we go into anything, I want to ask you to like, follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff. I'm here for all of it. Today, I want to talk about inner child work because I'm hearing this come up a lot. So I specialize in trauma, specialize in working with trauma. I am in a degree program right now for traumatology, which drills down on trauma. I do EMDR, all of those things involving trauma because I've also had wounded inner child. So when we talk about inner child work, we're talking about dealing with those things from the past so that you can focus and function in the present. And some of those things were so traumatic that we've locked them away. Our brain is so powerful that we have locked them away. The problem is with different, what we call triggers. I know we've overused that word immensely, but what we've called triggers, they begin to seep. Our box no longer holds everything that we've tried to lock away. And so that inner child needs loved, and that inner child needs to be told that they are enough, that they are acceptable, that they are wonderful, that they are precious, that someone loves them, and that they deserve to be loved, and all of that, because somewhere along the way that didn't happen, or if it did, the negative so outweighed the positive that it wasn't felt enough to make an individual feel whole. So we're tapping into a bunch of different theory. Inner child is not its own theory, as far as I know. Inner child work is not its own theory, as far as I know. So it pulls on things like Carl Jung, and attachment theory with John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, and internal family systems with Richard Schwartz. So it pulls on all of this stuff and allows us to go back and reparent that inner child. Because a lot of times when you find yourself having overly expressive reactions to things that probably, I hate to use the word should because I think we live shouldy lives, but probably shouldn't have been that reactive. It's often something deep down inside bubbling. Inside that box is trying to seep up. So inner child work includes going down there, reparenting, reloving, showing that child that they are acceptable. There are many ways to do that. And one of the first things that you have to do is acknowledge that there was some wounding, that there was some issue, that there is some trigger, that it isn't just the woman with the cart in front of you paying her bill with pennies. That's not the thing that's making you scream and throw things in the middle of the supermarket. Like, that is definitely an overly expressive reaction to a scenario. And those are some of the things that you want to check on when you're looking for that. So acknowledging that, hey, this is probably not socially acceptable, nor is it something that I want to be known for doing. And then identifying those triggers. What are the things that are triggering you? What is this reminding you of? What is the impatience coming from? Did you learn that from someone? Did you see someone do that? Did someone teach you that? Did someone tell you that they're not going to wait on you when you have things like that? Were you a little kid at the store counting with pennies and your mom or your dad flipped out on you in such an overwhelming show or display of emotion that you no longer can watch anything like that transpire? And I'm being exaggerant intentionally, because I want you to see what is happening in society and when we're not dealing with the work that needs to be done on that inner child. So identifying those triggers. Another thing that helps when you're working with your inner child is identifying happy memories. Sometimes we get so lost in the negative memories that we forget about the happy memories. We forget to balance. We forget to say, okay, yes, I had a sucky life. I was abused. I was blah, blah, blah. But I also Went to the amusement park every year. I loved going to the amusement park with my family because it was the one time that we didn't argue, nobody threw things, nobody cussed, blah, 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 whatever. So that is one. And your goal in this is to protect when you are triggered, your fight, flight, freeze, fawn, feign goes into effect almost immediately, right? And especially now that you're an adult, because whatever happened to that inner child, the adult that now has the capability to leave or the capability to fight doesn't have to tolerate it. Whereas a child usually can only freeze or fawn or feign. They cannot leave. They can't sustain themselves if they leave, and they can't fight. The person's an adult. What can they do, really? So uh, sometimes that is triggered because you have the ability, and your purpose is to protect that inner child. That reparenting becomes protecting that inner child by saying, no, 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 this ain't never going to happen again. You're not going to talk to me like that. You're not going to, whatever. So asking yourself, whose face am I seeing? What scenario am I in? Am I in the scenario that's actually happening? Or am I back at my 5-year-old self being yelled at by the teacher, being told I'm never going to be anything, being beat extensively or abusively? So those questions have to come up as you are reparenting. And some of the things that I use a genogram. I always use a genogram. Every single client I have ever seen has a genogram. It's either been started because we end up going down a rabbit trail, or it is completed and we've been using it throughout as our foundational piece. My supervisor at the time, Priscilla Ortlip, was the genogram queen, and she said every second session was a genogram, no matter who it is, no matter what they want to do. And I found that to be gold, because the genogram gets you back to the triggers, helps you figure out what happened, who was involved, who are the players in this, who is the abusive uncle, the drug addict, the whatever. So that is good. A genogram and a timeline, sometimes a trauma timeline, sometimes just a life timeline, a lifeline telling you what you've been through, so that you can see the things play out in order and begin to, not necessarily in order. We often think in terms of events and not in terms of chronological order, but we can take those events, jot them down, and then put them in a better chronological order. So some things you can actually do to help yourself. First of all, is hug yourself. There is what is it called? Havening. Havening is a wonderful practice where you are hugging and loving yourself and finding the warmth and getting to the place where you get back to the love for that. That self-hug is wonderful. Having conversations with that inner child. Those things that you do, that you say things like, oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, I'm so stupid. Going back and reframing. Doing a positive reframe. You are not an idiot. Okay, you made a mistake today, but everybody makes mistakes. You are a wonderful child. You've done wonderful things. You made wonderful accomplishments, blah, blah, blah. Fixing that. Going back, having those conversations. How did that feel? When nobody asked you, how did that feel? Asking yourself, asking that inner child, how does it feel? I know it sounds crazy, but it is the most sane thing you will do to reparent that inner child that lost that opportunity. Positive affirmations are great for reparenting, setting things in stone. I am great. I am a conqueror. I am victorious. I can do this. I can do all things. Those things, positive affirmations, do more than people give them credit for. Journaling, I'm always good for journaling. You will always hear me talk about journaling. Journaling is the what's the word? The attempt of the prefrontal cortex, that functioning, reasoning brain, to come back online when you're in trauma. And it kind of gives not congruence, but a level of togetherness, joint effort of the base brain thinking with that functional brain thinking. Because to write, you're using your prefrontal cortex. To think of what you're going to write, knowing how to write, knowing how to spell, all of that is all prefrontal stuff. That's all the developed brain that is not the unregulated trauma brain functioning. So journaling is a big piece. Gratitude journals, self-love journals, just journaling what you're coming up with. Another thing that's good for reparenting is letter writing, writing a letter to that child and telling them what made them special, what made them valuable, what made you, because we're talking about you. Um, that is a great thing to do. Another thing is visiting childhood memories, because sometimes, and I would take a friend. Also, I would always have a lifeline. I always have somebody you can tap into if you go off the deep end. And yes, you can potentially go off. I hate to say that like that, but you can go off if you go too deep into it, and you'll get emotionally overwhelmed. So it's always good to have somebody, some lifeline that you can tap into, somebody who can go with you to visit that old house where you experienced those things, or go to that school that bothered you so much. I recently visited a school that I didn't realize I was traumatized by. I was living in trauma in that time, and I wasn't functioning well in that school. And every time I go by it, I have a visceral reaction. But I'm learning myself and learning how to be okay with this child, that I am no longer that child. I am safe. I am protected. Nothing is going to harm me. No one is going to harm me, because I was being harmed by an individual at that time. No one is going to harm me. So reminding myself in that same space when I am strong enough to do it. Now remember, don't do that prematurely. Do it with the accompaniment of the accompanying, I don't know, it's kind of accompaniment, maybe that is a word, of a therapist, of a trusted friend that can pull you out, that can call 911, that can do whatever to protect you and to protect your wounded inner child. And last but not least, this is going to seem extremely silly, but I'm going to say it anyway. Playing. Did you know that playing gives your inner child expression and the opportunity to just be? It frees that inner child that has been so locked away by adulthood, or by perceived adulthood, because it wasn't adulthood when you were young, if you were parentified early. So these are some of the things that you can do. You can also always call a therapist. There are several therapists that are working on trauma, that are working on going back into the past in order to go forward in a healthy manner. I am one of them, and you can reach me at Life Anew. So reparenting and focusing on that inner child work is bigger than we think. But I'm here for it. I am totally here for it. This is my zhuzh. This is where I love to help clients travel safely, whether we do it physically, or we do it literally, or we do it figuratively in the brain. I love to travel to those spaces. So if you feel the need to reach out, please reach out to Life Anew, www.lifeanew.com. And I'm Fabian Williams, marriage and family therapist. And I am here for anything that you need in that realm. Have a blessed and beautiful day.